Digging Up the Marrow is a found footage, fake documentary about monsters that live in the Marrow, a place deep underground where all the misfits live. Directed and starring Adam Green, which you might know from movies like Frozen and the Hatchet series, Digging Up the Marrow doesn't start out in the Marrow or anywhere close. At first, it seems like a documentary about Comic Cons and the monsters in pop culture. You get a lot of cameos here, and it gets the ball rolling. It all leads up to a meeting with William Decker. Decker has become a bit obsessed with this place he calls the Marrow, a place where all the people labeled as freaks eventually go. He even claims to know the entrance and to have seen creatures coming out of it. They play it off like these are people with birth defects, but eventually Decker shows them some drawings of the creatures. These are straight up monsters, not people with physical ailments. There's also something going on with Decker. He has a room that's chained up in this house, and in general, he's just a little too obsessed with these monsters. Adam and his crew don't believe Decker, but for the sake of getting footage, go with him to one of these Marrow sites, an old graveyard out in the middle of the woods. They hang out there all night and see nothing. Decker claims something was there, but when they analyze the footage, they see nothing. Now they think Decker is just crazy. While going over a couple more monsters, Decker slips out that his son drew them. He hasn't mentioned anything about his personal life, especially anything about children. They do try to get more info from him, but he keeps changing the subject. That night, the team goes back to the graveyard. Not really sure why, because they all think Decker is nuts, but I guess they just want to give him one more chance. Good thing, too, because tonight they actually see something. Decker says it's right in front of them, but they can't see a thing. The camera guy, Will, turns on the light, and bang, there it is! But what is it? Looks pretty silly, but it is enough to convince the guys that maybe Decker isn't crazy. Now they need to find out what's happening here, so they set up a small light and a bunch of cameras and set them to record all night. In the meantime, they go to a couple more horror conventions. While talking to other directors and people in the business, Adam finds out that Decker reached out to all of them first. No one in Hollywood would listen to him. Adam was his last choice. Back home, Adam confronts Decker about this and asks how many other directors did he go to. Decker tells him Adam was his first and only choice. Now he's straight up lying. To make matters worse for Decker, one of the graveyard cameras went missing. They review footage from ones they did have and find Decker turning the cameras off. But he forgets one, and we see him feeding something down in a hole. One pretty cool thing that you wouldn't have noticed the first time watching is while these guys are talking, the tape is playing in the background, and you see another monster. Tombstone.
For this to be real, and now I've seen it, and for better or for worse, this lunatic is the guy who can bring me to it.
Not being able to trust Decker, but also not sure what's out there, the guys decide to go to the site by themselves to see what they can find. They goof around a little bit. Adam loses his shoe in a hole in the ground, but then out of nowhere, Decker yells at them for being so loud. Adam confronts him about the multiple directors thing, but then we get a tiny little monster that runs by. They hide in the bushes, and they hear something big walking around. Now we get to see some really cool looking creatures. Before they were kind of goofy looking puppets, but now you get this guy. And then this guy stops them at the car. They peel out of there and make it back to Decker's house. They argue about what to do, but in the end agree to meet back there in the morning. So that's what they do. But when the guys arrive, they find the place empty. They ask the neighbor about Decker, and she says the house has been vacant for a year. They go inside that locked room, and it's pretty obvious this is where Decker was keeping his son. So now they go to the graveyard and see the hole has been filled in. It seems like they're screwed, and they won't ever really know what the Marrow is. But then, they get the one missing camera. Something's walking around in the hole under the ground. We see Decker locked in a cage. He says there's no such thing as the marrow, and that there are no monsters, and just to ignore it. He's obviously being told to say this, but by what? Next thing we know, we're in Adam's house, and then in his room. The creature roars. Adam probably craps the bed, and the end. Despite the title, they don't ever actually dig up any marrow. There aren't even any shovels in this whole movie, so if you're expecting some construction crew digging around, you'll be disappointed. I, however, was not disappointed. I liked digging up the marrow. I like how the audience goes along with Adam and his crew. We too don't know if Decker is nuts, or if there really are these monsters living under our feet. In the end, there are more questions than answers. Sure, the marrow is real and these creatures do exist. But what about Decker's son? Is he one of them? Certainly seems like it. Who was the guy at the end? Was he their leader? I'd say my only complaint is that we don't get to see more monsters. I like that they have become masters of blending in. I'll admit, I didn't see that tombstone until I read about it. And there's that one that looks something like you would play on at a park. Until it shows its teeth, that is. Digging Up the Marrow is a fun movie that's just different enough. Give it a watch. I give it 3.5 marrow holes out of 4.
And whatever you're shooting, I'm not signing release.
Thank you.